Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well. Hope you had a great weekend. Delighted to see you all here as always. Just let me know you're hearing me and see me okay. That'll be fantastic, please. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah. Hey, Dino. Good to see you here, mate. Did get your text message you sent a little while ago. Great to see you here. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Right. Let's get things kicked off then. It's a interesting start to the week, of course. Fairly big week ahead, perhaps in terms of dictating what's happening going forward for the next few weeks. But as we start to do that, of course, remember these are my opinions, not representative of markets. Of course, as we are looking at live markets, please remember this is for educational purposes only, not in any way, shape or form direct advice to take trading action. You need to make that own decision and choices for yourself. Okay, so let's kick things off by having a look at what's coming across the news today. Of course, US equities pulled back mildly from the record highs we hit at the end of last week. And really that's because there wasn't much going on yesterday. And so a little bit of money coming off the table, perhaps after just a very, very stellar run over the last couple of weeks. And we know we're moving into a big earnings week, and we've got some big data coming out as well this week. So not surprisingly. However, despite that, we've got the US futures trading higher, and Asian markets are not very happy about what happened last night and have followed that US weaker lead. Nikkei particularly is getting hit hard, but we'll have a look at that in a moment. Some interesting moves on the currency market. The US dollar got hit particularly hard again and broke through support. Precious metals failed to go anywhere. And of course, cryptos have been fairly hit hard over the last sort of couple of days or so, down around 15% on Bitcoin and when last I looked. Hi, Rachel, how are you doing? And today's sentiment is going to be dominated by primarily the earnings coming out of the US later on today, pre-market, and for the rest of the next sort of 3 weeks or so, we'll get regular reports from some of the big boys. We've also got UK employment and the Chinese interest rate decision, which is less likely to dominate sentiment, but nevertheless will be looked at with interest, of course. So let's just put some meat around them bones. Let's just have a look at the futures to start with. You can see we are climbing slightly from our even positive market open. You can see the Dow's up there around about 0.25%, and that's really across the board as well. So these are towards the high of the Asian session, which we'll have a look at in a minute. US dollar is pretty neutral after that fairly big sell-off yesterday. We are getting some strength in the commodity-based currencies and some weakness in the yen. So we'll see even the Canadian dollar's coming up with the Aussie and the Kiwi. But you can see that the yen is struggling a little bit, as is the Swiss franc. GB pound's pretty neutral as well. Again, after a pretty strong day yesterday. So let's just have a quick look at the economic calendar. As we said, really, there's the Chinese interest rate decision, which didn't create any dramas. The RBA minutes, not sure what the outcome of that is. Markets haven't moved significantly since then. But in terms of this afternoon's data, though we've got some PPI data coming out of Germany, it's going to be the UK employment numbers that are going to influence market sentiment most. Possibly the bank lending survey report may influence also the euro particularly, but nothing coming out of the US really. So it's all going to be about earnings. In terms of what earnings are coming out today, let's just have a quick look at the calendar. If anybody needs this link, just type it in. I know I've put it in a few times, but you can see we do have quite a lot of coming through. We've got IB, which is obviously most of the tech stuff is after the bell. got Travelers, which are a Dow component. Procter & Gamble, obviously fairly big Dow-based company as well. Netflix are coming out after the bell, and Johnson & Johnson, of course, are pretty huge. And then it just gets bigger from there, really. Look at tomorrow's earnings. You can see how they ramp up during the week. Sorry, it's just a bit slow today. There we go. So if we look at tomorrow, you can see companies like Whirlpool, Chipotle, always looked at in terms of the restaurant sector. The Nasdaq as an organization also reporting tomorrow. So really what we're going to start to see, and the remainder of some of the financials. So what we're going to start to see is some of those tech stocks, some of those big industrials starting to report, and really it just gets bigger from here. Next week is the biggest week of all, but we've got significant earnings coming out this week, probably around about 15%, 15 to 20% of the S&P 500 will have reported by Friday. Okay. So if we start to have a look at some charts, let's start by looking at the US 500. We can see there's record highs we hit on Friday. Yesterday's weaker session, but of course we came off our lows fairly significantly, and of course today's futures looking bright. There's the Nasdaq, similar sort of picture. We hit record highs Friday and made up all of this 11% correction that we had mid-Feb to mid-March. And you can see there again, we're up in Asia. Just look at the 5-minute chart. You can see where Asia started. So we're gradually sort of moving up. If we look at our 50 MA on the 5-minute chart, you can see how that's moving higher. If we look at the US dollar index, really quite a staggering drop yesterday. Smashed through that support at 91.33. It's taken us down to test 91 as a nice round number. Was positive early on, but now neutral and even pointing negative on this futures contract. Of course, the CFD futures contracts you see are that slightly different to that which you see on Finviz, simply because the ones you see on Finviz are the next expiry. These will be a few. You can see this is the 12th of March, so this doesn't expire until the 11th of June. If we look at gold and silver, you would have expected gold and silver to bounce on the back of that US dollar index. We've got a really strange yesterday. We've got equity markets selling off a little bit. We got US dollar selling off a little bit. We got gold. You can see there, we did have a little bit of a ramp up, but it was close to that 200 MA, but then dropped off, and we got further selling today in Asia. And likewise with silver. Again, we sort of looked as though we're going to tackle that 2640 resistance, but then pull back. And again, looking pretty ordinary in today's trading. So the unusual circumstances where we've got equities, US dollar and gold and silver all dropping downwards. And that's usually a sign of one of two things. First of all, it could be that the market's in trouble, or it could be just that there's some profit taking going on, some money coming off the table in light of the earnings that are due to come out this week. So perhaps if we look at what happened last week with the banks, they beat expectations significantly. The forward guidance was good. In a normal world, that would send stocks soaring highwards. Now, although the banks did okay, they didn't break any records in terms of how they moved on the back of that. So it could be that the market is beginning to suspect that unless we get very good earnings across the board, anything that doesn't will get punished significantly. So just watch that now. We did have, as I said, we've had quite a choppy morning on the ASX 200. There's the futures contract. You can see how it's chopped up and down, but within about a 20-point range on the futures contract. if we start to look at some of the US dollar crosses, a really strong day on the euro. We've marked 120.40 as a key level. We broke through 129.88, which took us up to this level, but you can see how important this is if we just change pen color. There we go. We should be able to draw on there now and you'll be able to see it. So you can see support here, 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 and here. A brief one candle dip at this stage here. So you can see why this level at 120.40 is quite important. So just keep an eye on that. If we just skip it back to the hourly chart, you can see really how there's a lack of compelling evidence that we want to break through that. We looked as though we were going to do it. If we just move this up. So it looked as though we had a breakout going on, but what you can see, of course, is lower volume. Okay, so lower volume on this candle here meant that it wasn't a compelling reason to enter this trade despite the candle picture. So this is looking really sort of quite interesting. So we're looking now for a break or a move up to this level with a candle in the top third, which has increasing volume. May be difficult to get that at this time in Asia, may have to wait until the European markets are starting to open. Aussie dollar, as I said, the commodity-based currencies are looking strong. Aussie dollar's back up to 77.94. Let's call it 78 as a nice round number. I think that's where the market may pause. If it doesn't, if it smashes through that, then on the daily chart, there's quite an upside here of around about sort of 65 pips to the next key level. We look at an hourly chart, again, we can see how close that is to being broken. We shot out the gates after that initial sort of couple of hours of Asian open, and really have just gone up since there. So we're watching that pretty closely. Again, if we look at the Kiwi US dollar, more difficult to pick an important point on this, but undoubtedly that was a level at 71.65 that looked good on the daily chart, possibly a cap at 72.36. So around about 80 pips, and we're about halfway up that on the daily chart. So if you got in on this candle here, there, you would have been in a good place with this. That was end of yesterday, of course. But if we look at what's happened in Asia, there's some significant follow through with there. So again, we'll put it on a 30-minute chart. You can again see after the first couple of hours, we've just started to gather some momentum, but not as healthy as the Aussie Kiwi. But again, we had a pullback in that last sort of hour, just pulled back a little bit. So again, just maybe a little bit of profit, short-term profit taken on this, and the next move on this will be important. If we look at the US yen, really it's the only pair that the US is strong against today of the majors. And you can see we've found possibly some support at around about that 50 MA at around about 108.10. We can sort of see that bounce today in Asia after, again, that weak candle across the board yesterday in USD. We also like the look of GB pound. Now, this is shaping up very nicely. We'll just put it on a daily chart so you can see context. Okay, we marked a level on here, which we thought was important at 138, simply because, again, it's a nice round number. That got smashed through in one session yesterday. Very, very strong move, in excess of 180 pips. And you can see we're looking to see if there's going to be any follow through. No profit taken as yet in Asia. You can see how this level here is important. So if you pop it on the hourly chart, this is looking very interesting on the 30-minute chart. Let's just see where this candle ends up. Looked as though we're going to retest this level, which it did intra candle, and it's pushing back higher. So this, the GB pound, US dollar, 30-minute chart is our chart of the day. And simply because it's technically shaping up to be an interesting trade to the upside. So we'd like to see some increased volume on that. Obviously we want to see this candle green, but it is trading towards the top of this candle. Just look at the action in the last on a 5-minute chart. In the last sort of 15 minutes, you can see we did duck down. That would be profit taken, and now we're sort of trying to retest that level there. So that's what we're keeping an eye on right now. I hope that sort of I hope I articulated that okay. Just outside of the US dollar pairs, euro yen could be getting interesting. And well worth a watch, simply because this has been on the daily chart, has been in a sideways trend of really 41 pips for the last 2 weeks in terms of open and close. Although we have had wicks above this and below this, we've really been stuck in this very tight range. And we have tested that already today. So it could be interesting going forward. Now let's just check on a couple of the commodity-based currencies versus yen, because that is starting to move. So if we look at the daily chart on Aussie yen, you can see how that's back up to this important 84.30 level. In terms of upside potential, maybe only about 50 pips up to this next point here, but nevertheless very interesting. Look at a 30-minute chart, you can see how that's popped up again to that level to test it with some vengeance. If we'd seen this earlier on today, we would have been quite happy in Asian trading. That was a very nice move up there, around about 30 pips, around about 35 pips since open. And looking to see if there's any potential continuation in that. Canadian dollar, we don't often look at because it's quite choppy normally. But if we just put it on the daily chart, less compelling than the Kiwi and the Aussie, simply because we're a bounce off support. We really need a break of this candle here to the upside. Yen had a strong day yesterday to get interested in this. So really, the Aussie yen looks like a better bet than the Canadian yen. I've put the New Zealand yen on there. It's very similar picture to the Aussie. Again, if we look at the potential upside on this, you could maybe a little bit more upside on the Kiwi yen if we do get some move above it. But if we look at the hourly chart again, we've pulled back quite significantly off this level. All of these sell limit orders have now been triggered. Be interesting to see. So this is what happened here. So all of these sell limit orders got triggered at this point here, and a bit of profit taken to add to it. Since then, it's sort of traded sideways over the last sort of 40 minutes or so. So we're looking to see if we can regroup, gather some momentum to take us back up to around about 78 cents. And that, again, maybe one to watch later on. Okay, that's our flick around the currency markets. Let's just have a look at the ASX and see where we're going with that now. Okay. So just to start the ball rolling. We're about 0.3 down, and really since open again, remember we get this staggered open, so everything didn't open until this point here. So that's a true open, and really we haven't moved very far since then. So we're off our lows of the session, but not quite at our highs. But you can see how we've traded really within quite a tight range of about 15 points since open. So quite a lot of uncertainty, perhaps a little bit of repositioning going on. And really, if we look at advances versus decliners, not much to choose between them. So decliners slightly outweighing advancing stocks, but you can see it's a very sort of ordinary picture, really. We can see banks are down. Afterpay reported. So watch Afterpay. We'll have a look at a chart in a moment with Afterpay. They're really quite bouncy. They shot up on market open to around about 129.50 and then dropped back straight away almost. So that initial response to their earnings was good. Then they dropped back significantly. We are off our lows by about $1 as well. So we'll have a look at what the intraday action is like on that. You can see CBA again, just to follow that bank theme. CBA are down about 0.7% that stage. Also, resources are struggling. BHP are down, Oz Minerals are down, Fortescue are bucking the trend a little bit and are up about 12 cents. If we look at the travel stocks, Flight Centre is doing okay. That was the outperformer in this sector last week. Qantas is down again, but getting pretty close to that $5 mark that we've referenced time and time again. Is there a currency strength website you use to recommend? Not really, David. In terms of, actually, can I come back to that question? I'll just finish off this a little bit. You can see Rio's down. If we look at our other favorites down the bottom, Wesfarmers are holding their own. Worley we talked about last week being a really nothing chart, and that continues. But you notice Zip is up despite Afterpay's weakness, and Xero has pulled back a little bit, but again is off its lows. We seem to have a resistance there. We'll have a look at a chart because I know that's one of our favorites. We can see Westpac are down to the down as well. So really quite we've got markets being pulled back down by both resources and by miners. So it's not surprising. Obviously, Oz Minerals have a little pop higher. It's really quite not surprising to see the market struggling a little bit. Now, David asked the question, is there a currency strength website that I use or recommend? Well, I guess it depends on what you mean in terms of currency strength, because it's not the difficulty with coming up with a currency is, of course, currencies trading in pairs. So you've got to sort of see it in that context is the first thing I would say. So technically you can look at how currencies are performing on a chart. So that is probably about your best currency strength indicator of all. And again, you'll notice that when I do that, I start with the daily chart and then go down to an hourly chart, usually just to sort of get a feel for what's happening in the day. The FinViz site that I put up is probably really sort of gives an indication about what's happened since Asian market open. So sometimes, as you saw there, we saw that the I'll just put that back on because it is an important question. You can see there that the Aussie and the Kiwi are both higher. And the US is down. Okay, Judy's recommended us. So I'm just going to try and copy this and have a look at it. So we've got one suggestion from the floor. There's another one I've been looking at, which isn't too bad. So what you're looking for, okay, so I'll give you this. So this is one suggestion. So this is looking at correlations between currencies, okay? So the problem with this, I'm gonna just send it in chat, whoops. There is one that I'm having a look at embedded on Go Trade Academy, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. So when we look at correlations, we look at how well one pair moves against another, okay? So if we look at the Aussie, we look at the Euro Aussie, then it tends to be highly correlated to all of the other major USD crosses. So what this says is if we see that the Euro US dollar is moving higher, then it may be worth looking at the Kiwi US, the Aussie US, and the GB pound US. Okay, but probably not. And then so what we can do is we can look at those three or four different pairs and say, and technically, and then sort of say, well, look, this one seems to be technically the strongest in terms of it's just broken through, or it looks as though it's about to break through. Therefore, I'll keep an eye on that one when I'm faced with a choice of three that do it the same way. and you can do the opposite. It's a bit messy in terms of your thinking, but if we sort of say, well, look, the Aussie USD is really quite poorly correlated to the euro yen, okay? So it's quite a poor correlation there. So if we see the Aussie US under a bit of pressure to the upside, then logically, because it's not a very well correlated pair, we could have a look at the euro yen and see if that's moving in the opposite direction and creating a trade. So it's a little bit of a messy way of thinking, but look, if that helps anybody, that's great. It wouldn't be something that I would use, but that of course that doesn't mean that it's not valid. But that would be its major function, as I would see it, is look, if you see one pair that's doing particularly well and you're deciding, is that the best pair for me to trade? If you look across those currencies that it's correlated with, then you may get some ideas. Okay, thanks for that, Gigi. That's really, I really appreciate you sending that through, mate. But I'll have a look around, and I'll have a look around for Thursday. Okay. Okay, so we talked about a few of the stocks that are doing and aren't doing well. Let's just have a look at some charts. We'll start with APT. So this is APT. So as you know, I think we talked on Thursday about we're just ripping the profit out of this after 4 trades and accumulating into this because we sort of started to see this going on. So over the last sort of week, it's lost a little direction. And interestingly, there was an earnings report today. Let me show you the market action related to that. There's the open. So it opens here, wallops up to here, and opens here, then wallops down to here, and then consequently it's been quite choppy. Looks as though there's some buying thinking coming back into this. So this could be interesting. Bear in mind that this tends to be the knee-jerk investors may so this, as we get towards the back end of the session, just watch where this goes, because it could be quite interesting in terms of an opportunity. You're welcome, David, by the way. So there's one to watch, okay? If we look at, if we just put Zip on this chart as well, because obviously that's in the same sector, on a 15-minute chart, you can see again how we gapped a little lower, but then since then have come up. Now, what this could suggest is that there's some money, some of the money that was in Afterpay has maybe thought, hang on a minute, maybe Afterpay has done its run, and maybe Zip's is what to look at now. So again, a really interesting chart in terms of what the market and how the market may be thinking. In terms of, technically, Zip don't look like an entry at the moment. You'd want to see really a close that at least gets to that 970 level high that we hit Monday last week, I think it was. So although we are still in uptrend, it's a very choppy uptrend. And of course, that red candle sort of skewed things a little bit. And that is why that high close at 970 is probably one to keep an eye on. Let me just draw that a little more accurate. You can see why it stopped there. Well, simply because of it's the only landmark potentially that we've got on this chart. So it'd be a very aggressive entry to get in before then. But again, for those who like the idea of this fundamentally, there's still sort of 4.8% up to that resistance. So this could be one that if you subscribe to a longer term fundamental idea related to Zip, you could sort of enter a small position here and accumulate if it breaks that level. That would be one example of how you could accumulate. Let's just bring on Qantas. So Qantas now you would have expected a slightly better response to the opening of the corridor, but of course that was always priced in. Interesting candle today. In terms of open v close, we're actually around about the same price, but we have actually tested $5 in trading today. We've talked about this as a potential bounce level. So this is really critical because you can see we've got a big double top on this if we break through here, and could see ourselves down to around about this 485 where the 200 MA sits. So this is an important level. Top $5 for probably around about the last 3 or 4 months as a key level. So again, it could be one that you could sort of wait for a bounce, perhaps over 510 that engulfs this candle completely. Perhaps we just look at this in a little more detail. You can just sort of see that when it has bounced off this level at 509 appears to be important. Okay, so if you want a landmark again, perhaps if there is a bounce, we sort of see an accumulation opportunity up until this sort of 550 level. Possibly it might be worth baby stepping into this if you like the long-term trade. It was one of our it was the example we give as a bounce on an accumulation strategy over the last couple of inner circles. Now, don't miss inner circle tomorrow. We're going to do some crystal ball gazing and plant my flag in the next quarter. So don't miss that at all. Now school holidays have gone back as from today. I can catch up with where I should be. And so any emails I haven't responded to, then I will get to that. Okay, NST. Certainly, David, we can have a look at NST. I think we looked at this last week, and it was sort of struggling to get over this 1130 level. And you can see it's same story really today. It doesn't look as though it's got the appetite to break through this this sort of 1130 level with any gusto. It looked as though it was going to go for it in yesterday's trading, but just has pulled back to that. So undoubtedly in an uptrend, undoubtedly if you're in this already, you're probably tightening stops at this stage, but there's no reason to shout get out of here. It's certainly not an exit at this stage, but if it broke 1090, that would be a, oh bless you, Wayne. Yeah, if it broke that 1190 level where the 10 EMA is sitting, you might think your time to take some money off the table if you've been down in it since the breakout round here, or even this bounce here. So interesting chart nevertheless. Macquarie has been our chart of the week a couple of weeks ago. Holding on quite well in terms of it is up today, breaking the bank vibe to the downside, but obviously actually it's not up today at all. It's slightly down today on yesterday's close, but still very much an uptrend, still very much above that 10 EMA, and you can see open is around about where closes around about where open was this morning. Looking at Oz Minerals, this is one of the ones that's bucking the trend. You can see we had a breakout trade. Sorry, that's not very good, Mike. There we go. We had a breakout trade through $24 a couple of weeks ago. Moved higher, retested that, moved up again. And then, of course, we had a pullback yesterday. But we're looking quite a strong candle today. We're trading near the highs of the session. So again, just watch that. If we're going to close above 25.27, it's a new high for Oz Minerals. So that is certainly looking far, far better than any of its counterparts. If we look at BHP, which actually is holding on okay to 47, but certainly doesn't look anywhere near as strong as Oz Minerals. It does look stuck around about this 47.30 mark. There's 47 that we sort of talked about again last week. But you can see it's sort of pulled back there and really quite a bearish candle today. engulfing yesterday's and just continuing that little drift downwards over the last 3 trading sessions. We can't have a session really without looking at LYC, and this just continues to look bearish. We talked about this last week, bouncing down off that 640 level again. Doesn't look as though there's a lot of appetite for traders to stay in this. We had another move higher yesterday, but it's completely obliterated that and moved down. Very difficult to justify a short though, as its downside could be limited to around about that 556, so around about 40 cents downside. If you've really got a high risk tolerance, and very high I'm talking about here, you could look, if it breaks that 590 level, you could try and take advantage of that, but it wouldn't be way too risky for me. But you got a 5.7% move to the downside on that to hit the next support if we get a continuation of that. So we'd want this candle really to be closing at or below that pivot low from today. Wesfarmers we talked about already. And the Wesfarmers just look good. We started lower today. We've made our way back up to neutral. Not surprising if we see a pause around this level. First of all, it's just below a nice round number, i.e. 56. But then we have got this high of 56.30 that we hit in January. So really been a very nice long-term trade here, which we've been talking about since back end of March, and it's just crept up and crept up, but may well be starting to top out there. So if you want to keep an eye on it long term, then of course you've got a nice line in the sand. If you're in it already, then this might tell you a story over the next couple of days or so. So at this stage, you would be very tempted to try your stop underneath this in case there's any more selling. We just put on a line chart, you'll see where a likely established support may be, and hence a logical place to perhaps trail a stop to would be around about that $55 level. So that would be what I would be keeping an eye on as or trailing a stop to, if you've been in this for the medium term and saw it move up there. But nevertheless, still looking not too bad. Joshua, Galaxy are moving. Wow, okay. Oh, nice spot, Josh. Are you still in this? I think you were, but this Galaxy, we had a look at 2 lithium stocks. So we had a look at Galaxy and Pilbara Minerals, and Galaxy have way outperformed. The Pilbara Minerals have been good. Galaxy have way outperformed, and that's quite a staggering move higher. And talk of a merger would, it certainly looks as though it's been reasonably well received by the market, although if that was yesterday's news, it would explain this jump. If it was today's news, market's still processing perhaps. But that's really interesting. Thanks for that, Josh. Let's just have a look at Pilbara, because I actually close this position down. But you can see at 128 was the first potential point of resistance. Been in it since, been talking about it since it sort of broke this 112 level here. This was the other potential profit target on it, and it's actually tested that in today's session. So this is another one to watch. If we break 136 on a PLS, then that could be one to watch. And if there's any, the thing is, if you get M&A activity in a sector like this space, then you may well start to get chit-chat in terms of other other stocks within that sector. But you can see now we've tried this twice over the last couple of days. Although we have got a slightly up day, there may be just a little bit of caution in sort of breaking through this. Seek look as though they're bouncing. Wouldn't touch this really. We've done our play on this a couple of weeks ago. We took advantage of this move here. We'll be looking really for it to break that high there. So we're leaving Seek alone for right now. Kogan, we've also been keeping an eye on. Yeah, me too, Josh. Me too. It's a good trade. So Kogan looking interesting because we are again bashing against this 1350. We identified this as an important level last week with a potential upside if we break through this of around about 4% in the first instance, and then if we break that, then we've got a really hefty jump to the next key level. So again, this is a good example of where you may accumulate initially if it breaks through there, and then potentially more accumulation if it breaks through that 1410 level. I'm not seeing, if we look at Sonic for sure, I don't think you're breaking any records at this stage, but we are starting to look interesting again. We are up on today. Let's just see where we're at. Nice move up in the market so far today to bring us back up towards that 36.25 resistance. Very close to that actually. So that is looking relatively okay. Elsewhere in that sector, we talked about ResMed last week. Typical ResMed activity, bouncing all over the shop, being the technical term. So in fact, Sonic are looking at like a better bet than this from a technical point of view. Of course, I can have a look at Cochlear. There we go. So there's Cochlear. Nothing there. In terms of it did look as though it was going to break out last week, and I can understand why people may have been caught with that on this potential couple here. But really nothing right now. Broken back down beneath that 221 resistance or 222 resistance. ANN. ANN as a short is interesting, but you see we are up today. Just want to double check that, just make sure it's got all the data. Yes, it has. So you would have put a line in the sand at around about here, which it broke through as previous support. And we did do that in yesterday's trading, but we seem to have had a bounce back up to that support level that we broke through. So next move on this is critical. If you're in on this, you've probably got to stop sitting somewhere up near 39. If you're not in this yet, then certainly a break of 38 would suggest a potential move down to this 200 MA. Okay. Smart Group. Not one I look at regularly, so we'll just give it a chance to catch up on the data. You can see it's really trading in with a tight range at the moment. Doesn't look as though there's a compelling reason to get into this. We need to break $7 really. If you look at this action here, and Tabcorp, again, we'll give it a moment to catch up. No, nothing of interest there. $5 looks important. It's bounced off that level. Be interesting to see if it found some support around for this 480 level it's trading now. If it doesn't, we could see it down to 460 pretty quickly. Okay. So our really our chart. Oh, sorry, JB Hi-Fi. I missed that one. So JB Hi-Fi coming up nicely again. Had quite a bouncy couple of weeks, but you can see now that we've broken that high that we were holding on to. We'll just put that there. If I put it on a line chart, you'll see it in a bit more detail. So you can see that we're bouncing off that. But I think when we talked about it last week, I really sort of talked about this 54 level being important. We're about halfway between those two key lines. So again, possibly premature. So our chart of the day, possibly surprisingly, is Kogan. Not for right now, but let's see how it closes, because we get a close over that 13.50 and we could see a nice move up easily to $14 and then possibly beyond. So Kogan as our chart to watch, see how it goes into the close, and then we'll take it from there. Let's just have a look at the Russell. On a weekly chart. Yeah, so we're looking a bit triangular on this. But that probably fits with the fact that we're in earnings season. Of course, there'll be a lot of small cap stocks reporting as well. So we've just got this sort of uncertainty after a fairly incredible run, obviously underperforming the other indices to some degree. But you can see that even more pronounced on the daily chart, how it's got very triangular very quickly. Actually, probably just take that down a little bit, just to. Okay, so that's really a sort of textbook-like triangle pattern that we've got there. So, but that fits with exactly where we are in terms of waiting some earnings coming across the line. Okay, guys. Well, look, I hope that's been useful. I think I've had a look at all the charts. I'm just going to quickly check through. Yep, looks as though we've hit all the charts. So take care of yourselves. Remember that, of course, for those of you who are locked into that session, there's tonight. There's the second part of the trading development workshop. So results-based learning. So I'll just in case you're not part of that, and you can get access to the first part of that. I'm just going to put this in chat. Development. There we go. So if you want to make it along to tonight's session at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we'd be delighted to see you there. And of course, Inner Circle, that was last week's session. We're changing that today. So that's going to be essentially a Q2 outlook session. It's been a while since we've done one of those, and I'm going to give four to keep an eye on. So make sure that you hit tomorrow if you can. Just checking through all. You're welcome, Liz. Cheers, Brett. See you tonight, David. Okay, guys, one last quick look at the futures. You can see we're still sort of trading around the same levels as we did at the start. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy your day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.